What's up everybody? Dev Del Molino here, back doing another review, and this Thundercat album is calling my name. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and get into his new LP, Drunk. In my personal opinion, Thundercat is one of those artists that critics just absolutely rave about, and I think for good reason. He does a very good job of bending the genres of soul and funk very well together, as well as adding in elements of electro, and as he gets further and further along his discography, he's adding more and more hip-hop and R&B elements in the fold as well. Drunk is an album much like the rest of Thundercat's discography, in which it's made up of extremely unique parts. And there are very few to no artists at all that would put together an album like what we've listened to. Drunk is kind of a musical smorgasbord. A lot of these songs vary quite a lot from one another in their execution of musicality and lyrical content. And all these songs are in very bite-sized proportions. The pacing of this album is very interesting because out of 23 tracks, the longest song that you'll find on here is 4 minutes and 1 second long. There's a lot of songs on here that are in that 2-minute range or even below 2 minutes, and there's a few songs that are not even a minute long. And in listening to Drunk, you come to realize that this is a dynamic that fits very well with Thundercat's musical style. It allows him to follow up on a very extraneous idea, play with it, flesh it out into a very short song, and then he can be on to the next idea that floats into his head. And that's kind of how this album plays itself out. We get a series of vignettes that all center themselves around a set of recurring themes and motifs. So one song may be Thundercat telling a specific drunk story, while the next song is dealing with the idea of alcoholism and depression, and then a song after that just kind of embodies the weird wackiness that comes with inebriation. Now on top of all that, a lot of the songs on this album are centered around Thundercat's elite bass play. And when it comes to music that falls within the hip-hop stratosphere, music that is centered around live instrumentation sort of plays a niche role in the genre. So yeah, this album is made with a lot of elements that just come together to make some pretty weird shit. The first song that we actually get with real lyrics is Captain Stupido. And again, I go back to this album having its weird moments. This song is about Thundercat's daily routine, which consists of combing his beard, brushing his teeth, masturbating, partying, sleeping, and repeating that daily. And this album has a handful of those tracks in which the lyrical content of a song exists solely for the purpose of some form of comedy. So songs like this one, Jamil's Space Ride, Bussin' These Streets, and A Fan's Mail are all these songs that kind of deal with one funny or weird topic, and they punch it through long enough to create the joke, and then Thundercat just moves on to the next song. Not only are these songs funny, they do carry good tunes, and they work within the context of the album, because again, they're bite-sized and they don't overstay their welcome. These songs don't necessarily get unfunny at any point. Now, the midsection of this album is where I think most of the strongest material comes from. Show You the Way was the lead single off this album, and it features, interestingly enough, Kenny Loggins and Michael McDonald. The instrumentation on here is pretty well executed, and the bass line specifically is thicker than a bowl of oatmeal, as some would say. Michael McDonald does his thing, Kenny Loggins slides into this track real pimp-like, and this all comes together and plays to Thundercat's strengths. He can create very off-the-wall and eclectic tracks, but he makes them very, very groovy. Friend Zone is another single that we received before the release of this album, and it's a song that I find to be very reminiscent of Kendrick Lamar's To Pimp a Butterfly sound. Thundercat was, of course, a collaborator on the To Pimp a Butterfly album, and I think had kind of an important influence on the direction of that album. This is a collaboration that introduced Thundercat to a lot of hip-hop fans, and so it doesn't really surprise me to see him come back to this style on this record. Mono Poly does some serious work on the keyboarding over this track, and really breathes some life and some energy into the instrumental, giving it a very intergalactic vibe. Lava Lamp and Jethro are an impressive pairing of songs back to back on this track list. These songs are kind of night and day, though they do seem to cover the same topics. The former sounds a bit more downtrodden by the anguish in its content, whereas the latter is a bit more blissful and warm. Thundercat seems to be singing about a lost friend or loved one as he goes on with these lyrics about a person that shined their light on him, warmed him up, and now suddenly he's just cold. He evokes his emotions very well on both tracks, because on the first, his lyrics are pained, whereas on the second, his lyrics are a little bit more hopeful. The instrumental on the second part kind of picks the listener back up and leaves us a little bit more at peace with the topic that we're covering. Tokyo is my absolute favorite song on this album. It's kind of just Thundercat reflecting on a visit to the otaku paradise that is Tokyo, Japan. I think this is a song that particularly encapsulates a lot of what this album has to offer all in one track. The lyrics are super fun to read into, they're full of Japanese pop culture references. A lot of these references are very funny, very clever, and the instrumental here is envisionary of Tokyo nightlife, bustling, lively, and voltaic. There are a couple songs on this album that I think are just generally more digestible to a mass audience. Walk On By with Kendrick Lamar and Drink That with Wiz Khalifa are two songs in which the material is a little bit more digestible than the rest of the material that we get. I think this is a very important and well executed element within the planning of this album because, again, there's going to be a lot of new people coming to this album, and you just want to make sure to give them something digestible so that they can get down with the rest of the material that's very weird, off the wall, and kind of crazy. Where this album experiences most of its flaws is sort of on the back end of this record, kind of the last 15 minutes or so. What I got within the home stretch of this album was a lot of songs that either didn't grab me or they left me wanting a lot more, and not necessarily in a good way. Where I'm Going and Black were two songs specifically that fell into background music territory a little bit more easily than I would have cared for. I Am Crazy has a vocal performance on it that I really like and is one of my favorites, but the song is literally 26 seconds long. The title track, Drunk, is one that I actually really like. It just starts off with these lyrics that are so cliche emo. Drowning away all of the pain until I'm totally numb. And I'm just like, that's just so like unnecessarily edgy, and why am I listening to Linkin Park lyrics? The Turn Down is a song that I really don't care for, primarily just because it features Pharrell, but he has so little impact on this record. When I see a Pharrell feature, I want to see his imprint on the song, and this song just didn't fit him very well. Very sleepy, boring, and I really wish I would have heard him on a number of different tracks rather than this one. DUI is a song that serves the loose narrative of this album very well. It's just that it's not a song I like returning to. It's very drab and boring and has very little replay value to it. So yeah, there's a bit of a nosedive at the end, but that doesn't necessarily stop me from feeling like this is an awesome piece of work that Thundercat has put together, and we should all be really impressed with what he has come with. Overall, I would describe this album to be consistently originative, eccentric in the most endearing and wonderful of ways, and just a tad incomplete towards the end. With that being said, I'd like to know what you guys think of the album from a lot of what y'all told me. Y'all been rocking with it quite a bit, but let's have that discussion down in the comments section, okay? Other than that, I'd like to thank you guys so much for watching again, and of course being patient with me as I worked on this one. Y'all are going to get another review very, very soon, and you'll just have to rock with me then, okay? Dev Del Molino, Dev Del Molino out. Peace.